Hi friends, I'm Richa and this tutorial is about a basic MapReduce program that we are going to run on a Cloudera Hadoop platform. So I have a vote count application for a country called Utopia. The country has several booths for their citizens to cast the vote, and the output of every booth is a txt file with the name of the candidates. So the output files has been loaded on Hue on the file browser. So I've logged into my Hue localhost 8888 with Cloudera username and go to user Cloudera Utopia boot files, and I can see that there are two input files, booth1.txt, which looks like this, where each name is one of the vote cast for this candidate name, and similarly the second txt file also. So I've created a MapReduce program on Eclipse. So I'll go to my Java Eclipse and see that there is a new project called Utopia Vote Count with the package name Utopia MR. MR stands for MapReduce. And go to the mapper class. So this is a vote count mapper class which extends mapper, which takes the key in output as object text and int writable. So I've created a final static object 1 with int writable. Now this is an object and not an integer, because for MapReduce programs usually the objects are transported over the network, and so we cannot use primitive data types here. And then we override the method map, which is there in the mapper class, as key object text value mapper and the context. And then each input file has each line as the input line. So the line is split via a space, and the first character is used as the candidate's name, and it is stored as key, the candidate name, and passed with the value 1. So the output of the vote count mapper is inserted into the vote count reducer. So we can see that context.write new text, the first element of the array after doing the split, comma 1. So the reducers receive the outputs from the mapper. So this is a vote count reducer class which extends reducer, and we override the reduce method which intakes the key, the values, and the reducer.context. So this is, we initialize an integer variable vote count equal to 0 and then iterate over the values which were received from the mapper. So we iterate and retrieve each value, and we increment the vote count. So when it matches the key, every time the vote count value for the key is increased by 1. So now to run the mapper and reducer, we have a main class which is called vote count application, which has our main method. This is the entry point of our program. It extends configured and tool. Tool is basically used as to run the map reducer. So we see that tool runner.run, and then there is a new configuration object, the object of vote count application, and the input arguments. So when we run from the command prompt, we run the vote count application.class file with input arguments. We override the run method here, the run method which is there in the configured file, configured class. And we see that if while running the vote count application, the input parameters are not equal to 2, then it means that this is an error, because it is expecting input folder as the first parameter and the output folder as the second parameter. We create a job similarly to the way we create in a Spring framework. So we create a job.getInstance, and then set the key class as text class, output class as int writable class, mapper class as vote count mapper.class, set reducer class to vote count reducer.class, and the input format to text input format, because we know that our input files is a .txt file. If it is an XML file or other kind of files, we use separate format files here. And then file input format dot set input path, and these are the arguments which are entered while running the application here to the job. So we are inputting the input paths and setting the output path, and then we set the class for the jar as vote count application.class. This is the entry class of your program, and then we submit the job. So now our MapReduce program is ready, and to run it from the terminal, we have to export it as a runnable jar. So right click on the project, export, Java, runnable jar file, click on next, browse the location. So that's Cloudera, Workspace, Utopia Vote Count, bin, OK, and launch the configuration as vote count application Utopia Vote Count. You select the extract required libraries into generated jar. This is because the MapReduce program uses the Hadoop library. That's Hadoop Common, MapReduce Client Core and Job Client jar files. So when extracted as a jar file, it contains these jars. Then we go to the terminal and use yarn command to run the jar. So yarn space jar, the directory structure for the jar file we saved in Workspace Utopia bin folder, then your input folder path and output folder path. Make sure that this folder is not already created, because this command is going to create the output folder and insert the output file there. So I click on enter, and we can see that our program is running, and there were two input files in the input path, as we had said, boot1.txt and boot2.txt, and it has submitted the job, and we can track the job at this location. And go to the Hue job browser to see that a new job has been introduced. We go to click on the job browser, and we can see that this is our job, which is in the running status, and it got succeeded. Now we want to go and see the results. So for this, we go to the file browser and to the output folder, which was vote count output. We click on this, go to part R, and we can see that the votes has been counted for all the 5 candidates like this.